Hey everyone, it's Maria and welcome back to the channel. For those of you who don't know me, I am a third year medical student at the University of Cambridge. So today I'm going to be delving into the 10 things I wish I had known before I started university. Now granted, some of these may seem slightly mundane, but I know they would have made my life so much easier and more efficient from the get-go. So number one, the first thing I wish I'd known before starting university is how to touch type. It sounds really ordinary, but it meant that my first year was utterly chaotic, especially in the first term. So before I started uni, I couldn't touch type and my typing speed was absolutely appalling. So much so that I was embarrassed to type in my lectures and would just sit there with my pad of paper and handwrite everything, which was, for me at least, not a very good strategy to understand anything. So I would be writing really slowly, I would miss things, I'd get confused, and then I'd have to redo the entire process. When I went back, had to re-understand everything and even make lecture notes over Christmas when I had mocks coming up. It was a really busy year and it definitely made my time a lot harder. In all fairness though, it makes sense because everything at school is handwritten. You get given notebooks in your lessons just for that. You're not really bringing in your laptops, and even the exams are almost always handwritten. So you're better off with a really good speed at your handwriting than at typing. And then over the course of second year, I actually started to learn to touch type. Sure, by the end of year exams, which by then were all typed and online because of the pandemic, I still wasn't completely there, but I did feel quite a bit more confident and I could keep up with the other people. And now in third year, I feel a lot more confident going into anything and like typing, and everything feels a lot easier. So writing essays don't take nearly as long, making notes doesn't seem as daunting, and it's little things like that which make you more likely to study. That is my main wisdom. Please learn to touch type if you don't. There are so many good resources out there, so many websites. You can do a diagnostic typing test, and then from there you can go and actually learn to touch type. So I've linked those resources below. So useful, I highly recommend. Point number 2, please don't buy any textbooks. Honestly, it's not worth it. So many people had told me before uni that I shouldn't buy them, and that was the mindset I went into uni with. Fast forward 2 weeks into term and our director of studies, so that's the person who's in charge of your education, tells me I have to buy the most recent edition of all the books for our courses. So we needed one for physiology, one for biochemistry, and one for anatomy. And let me tell you, those were very expensive. They all cost about £50 each. The sad part is, how much did I actually use them? Not a whole lot. You can probably count the times I used them on a single hand. Yeah, not great. Also, they were really difficult in terms of carrying home. They took half my suitcase and it was an absolute struggle to take on the train. If you do need resources, the online ones are often far superior. They're easier to use and access from different places. They're often more engaging, and there are so many free ones out there for medicine since it's such a popular course. In the cases where you do need textbooks, borrow them from a library, and if that fails, buy one that's secondhand and a slightly older edition. Those will often work, especially if you're just starting your time at university as an undergraduate. Point number 3, lower your expectations. You've all heard it, your time at university is going to be the best experience in your life. You're going to make friends for life, you're going to make so many memories, and it's going to be completely fantastic. But don't you think that's a bit naive and quite a lot of pressure for an experience? If you're constantly measuring up what you're experiencing against this ideal, you're bound to feel disappointed. Also, this is a time where it's already quite a difficult transition. You've probably moved away from home, you are doing some things independently for the first time, so you probably don't even know that many people around you, and you're making friends for the first time in an unfamiliar place. I think that's a massive expectation to hold yourself against. Point number 4, it's okay to not make friends, especially right at the start. I think this is particularly acute when you see other people around you all making friends, especially if you're starting at a course which starts relatively late compared to others. By that point, you would have already been swamped by all those pictures on social media of people already having made friends on their courses at other universities. It's really important to remember that friendships take time to build and maintain. Also, it's quite likely that the people you meet on the first few days aren't actually going to be that good a fit for you in terms of similar interests or perspectives on life. It might take a while until you've actually met the people who are a good fit for you. That might be through joining societies, different sports, or just meeting other people in your course. It takes a while, but it is worth it. Number 5, work out how much the first year is actually worth. There are big differences between universities and courses in terms of how much meaning they place on the first year. So for me, my director of studies in first year put lots and lots of pressure on us to do well. He would tell us, oh, you guys should really be aiming for a first. But you know, if you get a 2-1, that's still okay. That's a decent grade. Like, that's fine. I won't be mad at you. Looking back on it, I wonder why was there so much pressure on us to do so well in first year? Realistically, the first year mock we had didn't contribute to our overall bachelor's degree for the third year. It was completely separate. What it did do is contribute to our overall 6-year mark, which filters into some complicated system that I will go into in another video. But essentially, there are 100 marks which are used to determine where you can then go and work for your foundation years as a doctor. One of those points come from how you've ranked academically in medical school. To put things into perspective, 50 of the marks come from a situational judgment sort of test, which is done in 6th year. If you think about it, those 10 marks aren't worth very much, and it's even less when you consider the contribution coming from just the first year. That's probably only 2 of the marks, realistically. So I think you need to put slightly less pressure on yourself if you're in that sort of position, and really consider what are your priorities. Personally, I wish I had not been so stressed about everything and I had made a bigger effort to meet people in my first year rather than following the advice of my director of studies. On the flip side though, your first year might actually be quite important in terms of contributing to your third year grade. If that is the case, maybe it's a better idea to focus more. I think it's really important going in to have a clear idea of what your first year is worth and what your priorities are. Once that's sorted, I think everything's a lot easier. Number 6, if you do any other thing during the summer, I would say experiment with how you like to learn. So moving to uni is a transition, and you might actually figure out that the way you've been studying in school isn't really as applicable to studying at university. What I would suggest is to follow a lecture or a documentary that you find online. Maybe some good old David Attenborough documentary would be good. And then try to follow that over the course of an hour and see what is the best way for you to engage with the content. Is it by noting down some of the additional things that the person is saying that isn't in the handout? Is it annotating slides? Is it trying to copy out all the information and make revision notes? It's up to you, and you need to figure out what is most valuable to you in terms of the time you're putting in. What is important though is that you have a good strategy in place for when you're starting. It saves so much time faffing around at the start, and it just makes everything a lot more organised. Number 7, this isn't essential, but I think it's useful if you know some of the very basics of your course before going into it. For me, because I had never done medicine before, there was a whole lot of basic things that I just didn't know going into it. I couldn't even tell you what the femur was. I think You don't need to know a whole lot going in, but knowing some of these very basic concepts might help you not look so foolish at the very start, and it might help things make a little more sense going into the course, because some of these pieces of information might be seen as presumed knowledge already. Number 8, engage in societies and committee roles as much as you can. Everybody says this, but I think there's a big difference between thinking of doing the thing and then actually acting on it. So one of my personal biggest regrets is not going for a JCR position in my first year. So for those of you who don't know, this is the sort of undergraduate representative body that you have in your college. I think it would have been a really great way to engage with student life and to meet like-minded people. The reason I didn't go for it though is because I didn't think I was good enough, I didn't think I knew enough people, and I just didn't think I would get chosen, to be honest. So it was that fear that held me back. And honestly, if you look back on it, who's going to remember that you were unsuccessful? Nobody. On the flip side, you have everything to gain. So yeah, if there's something you're considering that you think looks interesting and well suited to you, go for it, because it might make your time at university a lot more meaningful. Number 9, learn to cycle well. So this is a really useful skill, especially in Cambridge, because there isn't that much in terms of public transport and buses. It's really convenient and free, and you can leave at any time. You don't have to be following somebody else's schedule. For me, I saw the biggest value in getting to the boathouse for 6:30 a.m. And trust me, that extra 10 minutes in bed made all the difference. There are a whole host of different rules about cycling on roads, and those are really important to follow, both for your own safety and for the safety of other people around you. So if you are not up to date with those and you intend to cycle at university, just check those out, get some practice in, because I think it will make a huge difference. Number 10, brush up on your cooking skills. Now, I'm not saying you have to be any particular master chef when you're going into uni. In many cases, you won't even be cooking that much at all. But I think there are some basic skills that you just need to practice before going. Things like draining the water from the pasta before adding the sauce, or cutting up vegetables quickly and efficiently. Those are really useful and will put you in good stead for doing more complicated dishes at university. So yeah, there you have it. Those are my top 10 tips for starting at university. I hope they were helpful, and if you have any others to add, just add them in the comments. Hope to see you for the next video, and I hope you enjoyed.